Hi and welcome to a new episode of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Semple.
And you're a new and improved and vaccinated Ewan.
Well, I'm nearly invulnerable. One small step and all that. I had the AstraZeneca one and the one that there's been all the fuss about. And I felt dodgy for a couple of days. You know, it felt like a reasonably bad dose of the flu. My daughter had the same reaction, as did my sister and niece, so it's obviously, maybe it's genetic, I don't know. But certainly feeling much better now. And it's funny how, having not been worried about it, you know, I was quite sanguine about whether I got or didn't get COVID. It's funny how you do start to feel safer once you've got one under the belt, sort of thing. It's funny.
I'm waiting for the text message, and I know I'm going to be frustrated because I'm not going to come back to the UK for another 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to get the vaccine until I get back and I quarantine for 10 days.
Until you come back to civilization.
I can't wait to come back to civilization. I mean, what they are doing here in continental Europe with this blocking AstraZeneca vaccine, it's just so silly. Yeah. And yet it's and you know, read a bunch of articles about it. I mean, everybody want to be extra cautious, or science has nothing to do with it anymore. No. Politicians need to be able to respond to what people say about them on Facebook.
It's so symptomatic, isn't it? I mean, and you're right, because the whole scientific thing, you're more likely to, you know, get a blood clot driving there than you are getting one from the vaccination. And you know, we're talking about how bizarre it is that you know, the UK having. So my dad, who's in his 90s, has been toing and froing about whether he should get the vaccine or not, and we had finally gotten to the point of agreeing that he was going to get vaccinated. And then he tells me he's decided to put it off because of all this stuff. And I said, what stuff? And then he starts telling me about the French and Italian nonsense and all the political stuff. And I'm thinking, here's this guy who's spent the last years vilifying Europe and persuading me that we should be leaving Europe and voting every chance he got to leave Europe. And now he's listening to them. It's completely bonkers.
I'm happy we're influencing him.
Okay.
This whole idea of politicians just going after the general sentiment because they're afraid of what might happen, of the pushback that there might be generated by a bunch of populists. It's not a very nice place to be.
Well, it's not just populists though, is it? I mean, because it's the same sort of, and this is, I think, about State of the Net, in as much as it is a consequence of how much time people are spending online, that indignation, you know, righteous indignation engine that it's become, and getting annoyed about everything and having to take a view on everything and polarising about everything, has huge impact on politicians. And it is going to be interesting to see how they deal with, you know, obviously the French and Italians have had this knee-jerk reaction to the potential backlash, but we're in a dodgy place if they're making decisions on that kind of basis.
Oh no, because it's a very slippery slope. Because at this point, people are going to lose faith in this, and the consequences are going to be a disaster. I mean, people will die for this.
Yes,
people will die because a bunch of politicians were not ballsy enough to put a step down and saying, hold on a second, this doesn't make any sense. The science is completely supporting this. Let's just keep vaccinating people.
Yeah.
In Italy, at least, the press has been doing a horrible job. So you had, major newspaper with full-page titles saying, scare in Europe. And it's, of course, people then are, afraid. I mean, literally yesterday, there was an article about a lady in Taranto, I think, somewhere in southern Italy, who went to have a vaccine, and as she came out, she was run over by a bus.
Sorry, shouldn't laugh.
And it's like, somebody
well, that was because of COVID, wasn't it? Clearly, she wouldn't have been there without COVID.
Somebody I know actually posted a comment. It was a joking comment saying it must have been an AstraZeneca vaccine. It's like, why are you reporting this? I mean, the
totally.
thing is, you don't need to report this. You don't need to report about every single stupid opinion out there. You can decide what is an opinion, what is worth of reporting and not.
Well, but they've stopped doing that. I mean, we were talking about, my daughter and I were talking about this in the context of the really, really sad story of the lady who got murdered in London.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just the horrendous impact on her family and her friends, and the way the press handle all of that, you know. And I was saying, if ever anything remotely newsworthy happens to me, fight them off. You know, I want no journalist anywhere near me. And Molly was saying, well, but they don't have the choice. You know, when you're in that kind of a situation, it all just kicks off and takes over, and you're out of control. You get no control over what's happening to you. And, you know, so I think that news engine, which still bangs on about the truth, is actually just about sensation. And you know, it is pretty much becoming a list of things to be afraid of. And as soon as they find something new and novel to be afraid of, they're all falling over each other to be the first to make us afraid of it. It's horrible.
I was observing in a completely different but still very popular event of the last week how it appears to me that it's all about having a position about something, you know, taking a side. When the Harry and Meghan interview came out, you know, the whole interwebs exploded with people taking a side, people being on this side or the other side. I mean, and I found this interesting because some friends actually sent me messages. It's like, you know, you live in the UK, you must know about this. You know, your friend
when you're having your afternoon tea with the Queen.
Yeah, and I am totally on the Queen side, of course. But I felt the need. I mean, I kind of felt the need to reply saying, "Oh, you know, I'm on this side or that side," and then I kind of thought, it doesn't make any sense. I have no idea. I don't know anything about this. I don't think that anybody is telling the truth. And most of all, I don't need to have a position on this. It's absolutely not required, and it doesn't help anyone. Yet, for 2 or 3 days, all the social media streams I was following had people expressing their opinion. And sorry. And there's nothing wrong about expressing an opinion, but they were taking a side. They were saying, "Oh, I'm on her side. I'm against her side." I mean, I say, "Oh, she's American, but she's the Queen, but he's an asshole." It's like, what do you actually know? And the press is feeding on this need to take sides. On what side? Are you on Meghan's side or on the Queen's side? Are you on the feminist side, on the police side? Are you on the women's side, on the men's side? It doesn't make any sense. It would be so healthy for people to try to create an environment where you can step back and just think about things without being forced to take sides.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was reading in a book, as all my books are, about Buddhism the other day, and about the self and the way the sense of self emerges in context and emerges in response to things that happen around us and to us. And, you know, the argument is it's no more real than that, but there's the knack of not or noticing that happening and preventing and making it less likely to happen. And the guy was making the point that with the internet, and this is where it is genuinely for the first time, that selfing happens communally, and so there are thousands, millions of us responding to stimuli in our eyes, defining ourselves by our response to that stimuli, and then it feels like an existential crisis because you've stuck your thoughts, you know, you've stuck yourself out there. And other people don't like the self that you've just stuck out there. So you get into even more desperate loops to try and maintain your position. And it's so interesting because it is as he was saying, the first time we've had that kind of direct, almost like neural network connection to feedback loops, which we weren't very good at dealing with previously in its much slower and analog incarnation, but we're really not good at dealing with it when it's constant in our pockets, right between our eyes, and does feel like a fight to the death over made up stories and opinions about shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, you mean like handles and hooks?
Yeah. So that was a tongue-in-cheek post, Paolo. For those of you who don't read my blog, it was a sort of minor domestic thing about if people in the house choose to use a door handle as a hook and hang a coat on it, it therefore no longer manages to function as a handle, so you can't get into the bloody cupboard anymore. And if you use a sink, which is intended for running water over stuff, as a storage base and fill it with the dishes that you can't be bothered running water over, then it ceases to function as a make things wet space. And there was a sort of debate in the comments about category errors. I called the post category errors, and somebody else said it was a training error. I wasn't training people appropriately. But you're right. I mean, it's categories. It's about labels and about this thing should be doing that and that thing shouldn't be doing that. And so I was slightly taking the piss out of myself about how much it seems to matter to me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think I waited for a day before posting the comment and said, "Can I'm going to do that." No, I'm not I'm not doing it. Yes, I'm doing it. Well, no, it's that category only exists there are just stories. They only exist in your mind. Yep. In your mind, true. The purpose of that is to open a door. In somebody else's mind, the purpose is to hang clothes.
Oh, no, but then they try to get into the cupboard and they can't get into the cupboard.
Well, they don't need to enter the cupboard. That's not their
priority.
Do.
They do when I tell them to hang the bloody coat up properly.
Well, that's your ego out there.
So much to get wound up about in so little time.
Well, I think that to some degree, if you write yourself into existence, actually it's a very healthy way of observing yourself and your thinking process. So I think that as long as you do it with the right approach and you don't do it in a type of echo chamber where 2 days later you have a bunch of Nazis who want to kill people who use handles as hooks, it's fine. I think that as we were saying,
you mean there's other people out there that I could get in touch with, Paolo? Oh, great.
Friends. I think that the challenge there is the having algorithms that will just try to spin this thing in the direction of extremism, and that is crazy. On the other side, I posted 2 things on Instagram in last week. A photo of myself holding my mom's cats, and I got 50 likes. And a photo of 3 types of salami we were tasting, and I got like 35 likes. And I gotta say, it was so satisfying.
I thought you were going to make some sort of significant point about the differences between cats and salami.
No, it's just food and cats. It's the internet, right?
It's what works.
That is what
the internet's for.
That is what the internet is for. But even doing it with all the, being very mindful of the process, I'm still for a couple of days and we're going back there and finding new likes, and everybody got the new likes. I was enjoying it. I must be interesting. I must be good. People like me.
Yeah. So it's interesting though, that whole. So I was mentioning to you earlier that we are still teetering on the brink of motorhome ownership of various sorts, and actually probably worth telling the funny story about me really genuinely being right on the brink of paying a silly amount of money now to look back on it for a VW California camper van. And it was literally the night before we pulled the starter gun or whatever on it that I suddenly thought, hang on, I've only ever sat in it with the roof up in the driver's seat. So I phoned the folks up, went there, sat in the driver's seat, and I couldn't sit in it by a good couple of inches. And it just then starts to dawn on you that I can't sit in any VW camper van. This is it, you know, and they can't adjust the seats for various reasons, whatever. So anyway, we're going down a very different path, much smaller thing, much more like a car than a van. But there's a couple. The channel's called Life is Too Short on YouTube. I'm sort of slightly wary of mentioning it because I think ruined several people's lives by telling them about Kev T, the lorry driver, and they now spend way too much time watching somebody else driving a lorry around Britain. But there's the same risk with Ken and Carol, who are... I've grown to love them, but I'm not sure I would still want to park next to them in a campsite. But because he gets slightly OCD about stuff that really, really doesn't matter. But
like
fantastic
handles and hooks.
Yeah, totally. Well, he changed. They had two plastic boxes that they used in the van, and one of which they had been using for rubbish, and they changed the use. So he made little stickers to put "not rubbish" on the one that used to be the rubbish, and just in case the two of them within about a 10-foot square box got it in the wrong. Anyway, don't let me put you off them because the videos are fantastic, and it just the reason I mentioned it was that this is what the internet was for. They've just been doing last year they did a tour of Ireland, and there's about 24 15-minute videos. And they're so well put together. I mean, he's editing them on his iPad, probably using LumaFusion, I would expect, while they're in the van. And he's got decent cameras, some big SLRs that are taking some beautiful high-definition videos, and using his iPhone. And he's also got a drone, which he's very adept at using. So, and then into cutting things. So he'll set his camera up on a tripod so that you see the two of them walking away from you up a path, and then the tripod's moved. You know, they must do miles and miles and miles of walking just to keep placing the cameras in appropriate places.
And then walking back and then walking
That's right,
again.
totally. I mean, he's quadrupling the mileage. But then they'll have great drone shots of the van driving through some fantastic countryside, and just basically it's amazing what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I'm just really enjoying the sense of place that I'm being able to enjoy because of it. You know, I'm also loving the nerdiness about the van, which is the kind we're going to buy, and just watching them fitting into it. You know.
Oh, but it's I think it's fantastic how the internet is allowing. Remember, we used to call it the long tail, right? So
yeah,
you have enough people interested about anything to be able to create good quality content for it. And
yeah, well, and saying the long tail, they just passed 1 million views.
Yeah, so but even if but because there is enough people on the whole planet interested in watching that. I mean, 1 million views is probably not a huge amount. It's nothing, any major TV channel would be interested into.
No.
But it's good enough, and they might actually be making some decent money with it, and be able to roam around. And of course, with all these new devices, the quality of the production is. I mean, you still need to know how to use them, but.
Yes, and that's where he's obviously got some real skill and experience in it. It's not his background, but he's very good at it. But weirdly, I mean, they're in rural west coast of Ireland, the middle of bloody nowhere, and they're in a car park, and some guy comes up and says he's been enjoying watching all the videos, because he lives locally. He lives in Ireland, and I think it's the first time that anybody's made this kind of quality of, air quotes, documentary about their area, about their town, and it's really, really interesting what it enables.
So here you go. That's the next thing you're going to do, right?
No, it's not. No, I found myself thinking about that and thinking, no, I'm too lazy. I mean, he's putting so much effort into it. Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't know.
Well, we can do podcasts. I mean, you can go sit somewhere nice, and then you call, and we do a
that's true. The sound of lapping waves in the background, and
you can just describe what you see, and I'll be just sitting in London in my little flat, being jealous.
Well, I think the kids are slightly worried that they may not ever see us again, because it's sort of dawning on us that well, yeah, thanks. Sort of dawning on us that you can just keep moving. Who knows what this might lead to?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with today's, I mean, in the same way as we have been working remotely for the last year, you can be anywhere, and you can be anywhere and do whatever you need to do. I mean, if you don't have to show up in an office every day.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's just dawning on people about this. And I saw a really interesting article about women and their previously assumed roles as homemakers and stuff, and disparities in pay in the workplace, and how that's another aspect of the world of work that this has poked a hole in. With roles shifting and changing and different people looking after different kids at different, it's been just really interesting how things that appeared inevitable have now become clearly not, and what we do with that.
This week was a year since I wrote my first quarantine post.
Yeah, so you posted about it.
So it was a year ago that we said, well, let's keep the office closed for a week and see what happens. And I mean, even rereading that post, I mean, I was saying I've no idea how long this is actually going to be, but how far have we come since that is incredible.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but how inevitable or likely it is. I mean, I would question the idea that there was a normal to ever return to, but that sense of reverting to something, I'm not sure how strong that is, how much people will want to or try to do that.
I'm looking forward to go back to the office and be with other people. There is something that I actually realized some time recently about a colleague of mine, and she started working with us after the first lockdown. And I wasn't in, I mean, so we couldn't meet during the lockdown. And then during the summer, I came to Italy. I think she went to the office a couple of times to meet with the others. And by the time I got back, we were locked down again. So we didn't, so bottom line, I've never met her in person. But,
Yep.
We talk all the time. We see. But I was realizing that she has no idea of how we used to work in the office. All those soft informations around how people do things and how much time you spend doing one thing or the other and what the habits are. I mean, all those things that you just absorb. Nobody is really teaching anything to you. You just look around yourself and you figure out how things are working. And the moment where all communication is very focused on specific meetings about stuff, where
Yes.
you necessarily need to talk about, the purpose of the meeting, because you don't want to waste time, right? You want to, you end up in a situation where a whole bunch of information is just not transferred. And I think that as much as I enjoy working from home, and I mean, honestly, I'm happy about this last year. I was able to spend a lot of time in Italy, which I like. Spend time with my family. Was able to walk on my hills, and it's all great. But in terms of human relationship with people I work with and people I enjoy working with, yes, we have been seeing each other every single day, but it is not the same thing.
And in terms of culture and the sort of stuff that happens subconsciously and subtly over periods of time, that's taken a hammering, hasn't it? And
yeah,
like your colleague, I've got friends of my daughter's who've started in corporate jobs for big accounting firms who haven't had the opportunity to get a sense of the sense of the place. There's no place to get a sense of. It's that's not a non-trivial cost. But equally, I don't think I hope people don't just all suddenly lurch back into commuting 2 hours a day to sit in an office staring at each other. You know?
No, or staring at the screen, which is even worse. I mean,
Well, yes.
I do hope that when we will go back, we will be able to enjoy and appreciate the difference between, working remotely and working there. So that we can continue spend some time working remotely. But at the same time, when we're not working remotely, we truly appreciate the fact that, you are in the presence of other people and you can, smell them.
And I hope that the management accommodate that. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing, because I think people will want to exercise more responsibility. They will want to be able to choose more how they work, and less willing just to accept the fact that you have to be in the office and your boss has to see you. That I suppose is the biggest hope. Not that we either lurch in one direction or the other, but that people are inclined to, able to, and allowed to make more thoughtful decisions about what they do with their time and what's the best use of it.
Well, I guess that from that point of view, there is a financial pressure around the fact that all these companies suddenly found out that they don't need to spend all that money in office space.
Yeah.
Which is probably pushing things in the right direction. I don't think that there is any going back to quote unquote normal. There is going to be a moving forward where hopefully there will be a little bit more, better used time together, and I am at this point I'm looking forward to that moment. And
to go back to the beginning of the podcast, it's another example of either or being the wrong way to look at it. It's not all or nothing. It doesn't have to be a fixed decision. Even if you choose to have a mix, that doesn't have to be fixed. There'll be some times in your life where one way of working predominates and others when another does. But I think it is generally the same sort of thing of we've got away with sort of being lazy in the past. We've just took what we were given and worked the way we thought everybody else worked. Whereas now we have to, or at least have the opportunity to think a bit harder. But why? And is it right?
Yeah, I mean, having been forced to change our lives for longer than a year, I think at this point we have been moved, and we have. I think that we were having the conversation a year ago, and we were saying, well, let's see how long this lasts, and let's see, if it's just going to be a couple of months and then everybody goes back to normal, it's not going to be a big deal. 1 year later, and it's not going to end, tomorrow. It's still going to continue for at least a few more months.
If not longer. I think I found myself thinking about the mask wearing, and in a position of being increasingly immune myself, I'm going to still wear a mask in most physical space situations for quite a long time, I think.
Oh, I think we will all be. It's habits will change. I mean, something we were chatting about earlier today. In the last year, we have not had a cold or a flu or anything.
I know.
I mean,
that's
not bad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to go back to having the cold and the flu for
people
weeks?
Sneezing on you in the tube
every year? Well, that was actually a pretty nice thing. Can we keep doing this? That's actually kind of good.
I'll wash my hands forever now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that is the price you have to pay, I think it's worth paying it.
Yeah.
And on this optimistic note,
a very clean optimistic note.
Yes, the health recommendation from State of the Net podcast.
Keep washing your hands and don't sneeze on people.
Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
See you next time.